Hey again. So, do you have a 2011 MacBook Pro that has a GPU issue? It's very possible. Apple actually did a recall on these, and now that recall is no more. And fortunately, here at PowerBookMedic, we do repair these. A lot of companies have tried to replace them. They just couldn't get good GPUs, a good source of GPUs. And fortunately, we've been able to find a good source of GPUs, and they've worked great. And we still do these repairs. This is the most common repair we do actually on GPUs. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have GPU issues, how we fix it, and see how it works in the end. So first of all, let me get a screen. And this is what your GPU failure looks like. Let's see if I can get that to show up there for you. Plug in the power, and you don't even have anything to boot up into. You don't have to have anything to boot up into to be able to see what the issue looks like. See if I can zoom in there. Do you see that? The lines in the screen? Let me just get this to show the Apple logo so you can see it clear. Give this just a moment. See that right there? You can see how there's lines in the Apple logo. That is your common GPU failure. That's what it looks like. And so we're going to show you how to fix this and get it working. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the fans, remove the heat sink, remove everything off the board that we can, because we're going to be using our BGA machine to remove this GPU, and so the whole board is going to get hot. So we're going to take off the fan, the heat sink, or the fans, the heat sink, the speaker, everything we can. Come on. Alright. Take the heat sink off. Fans off. Thanks. All right. Now we're going to remove the old thermal paste off the board here. Yuck. That thermal paste just dry as can be. And the issue with these GPUs, what happens is they just go bad. They get overheated. It's pretty much a faulty GPU chip. This happens all the time. Alright, I'm going to show you into the microscope. You see this around the edge of the GPU, this edge bonding? We're going to remove that. It's on all four corners. So we're going to heat up the chip, or just heat up the edges. Not going to burn it or anything. Just heat up. Carefully remove that edge bonding. Alright. That is one corner. Okay. One more corner. Alright, all the edge bonding is off. Now, the other side of the board. The other side of the board, we have our video RAM chips. And see how that has conformal coating, or not conformal, but the edge bonding around that as well? We're going to remove that because that's on the opposite side. So when the board heats up, it's going to flex those if we leave on the edge bonding. And we don't want that to happen. So we're going to take the edge bonding off of that as well. It's really easier to do this without the microscope. So, just going to show you this camera view. There we go. Just enough to heat up the edge bonding all around these chips. We're going to try to get it off in one clean sweep. And you don't want to disturb any of the resistors or capacitors around these chips because you're going to have to put them back on if you mess them up. There we go. All of the video RAM chips are clear. And now we're going to move on to the BGA machine. And I'll meet you there in just a minute. Alright, so here we have our BGA reflow machine. And the board is already on the machine, as you can see here. So what we do now, we pull out the camera. Over here, we have a view of the chip and what's above, which is the suction cup. And this is how we're going to put on the new chip, which I'll show you in just a minute. So now you see that the suction cup that picks up the chip when it's done reflowing, or done melting the solder, is going to pick up the chip that's right on the center of the die there in the middle of the board. So now we're ready to go. It's all centered, and we're going to press our button here, desolder. Pressing that, the head is going down. Put some light on it. So you see how it touches the board. It will lift back up. Sorry about the loud beep. And now it's going to heat up. It's going to run its profile, melt the solder, and then pick up the chip. And I'll show you that in just a moment when it's done running the profile. It takes about 8 minutes. Alright, we're getting close to the end of the profile here. We'll be picking this chip up here in just a few moments. Sorry if I'm shaky, trying to be as still as I can here. There it goes. Picked up the chip. Here is our board without the chip. Now it's going to run through a cooling phase. It's going to cool the board down, and then I'll meet you back in there for the microscope so that we can clean those pads off. Get it ready for a new chip. Alright, now here we have our board without the chip. Here's our bad chip that's been taken off. It's pretty much trash, so we'll get rid of that. Alright, now to clean these pads off. We're going to use some flux. This is Kester 2331ZX flux. It's a liquid flux. And you put this on the board all over the pads. And any oxidation or anything like that that's going to be on these pads, this flux gets rid of it super well. So now we're just going to add some more flux, or some more, we're going to add some leaded solder to these pads. All over the board. Just get a lot of flux on here, or a lot of solder. We're just going to gently rub this over the pads. This is going to clean the pads while putting leaded solder on these pads, which is going to make all this solder a lot easier to get off the board with leaded solder in there, because it melts at lower temperatures. Pretty much gathering up all that lead-free solder. Put a little bit more flux on there just to make sure we got all the pads nice and clean. And I'm not pressing hard on this. The solder tip is touching very gently to the board. Very gently. It's barely even touching. Alright. So I've cleaned all those pads. Got leaded solder on all the pads. Now I'm just going to wipe all this flux off the board. Have alcohol and a little tiny piece of a microfiber cloth that I'm using. And now we got the majority of all that nasty flux off of the board. And now I'm going to put some AMTECH Flux. This is NC559 Flux. Put it on with a brush. I'm also going to change my tip on my soldering iron to a bigger chisel tip. This makes removing the solder with a wick a lot easier using a bigger tip. Alright, let's see if I can turn on my camera here as well. There we go. Alright, I'm going to take this solder braid. I'm going to gently go over these pads. See how it pulls all the solder right off the pads? It's kind of like a little vacuum. I'll cut the braid every now and then as well to make sure I got some fresh braid. Again, I'm sorry if I get out of your field of view here. My view through the microscope is a lot bigger than through the camera. Cleaning all these pads. The reason we're doing this is because the new replacement chip has already it already has solder balls on the chip, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Alright, all the pads look pretty flat, pretty clean. Again, I'm going to clean the board with some alcohol and a microfiber cloth. And there you go. Nice clean pads to put our new GPU down on the board. They all look shiny, which is good. None of them look oxidized. They all look clean. Should be good to go. Alright, let me go ahead and go get the GPU chip so that you can see what it looks like. Alright, here's the replacement GPU chip. And that's the number on it. And you see here, it already has solder balls on the bottom of the chip. So there's no need to have solder on the pads, because when we put this down on the board, like so, the machine is just going to reflow it and put the chip back on. So now we're going to move back over to the BGA station and get that done. Okay, here we are back at the station. I've got the board set up and I have the chip on there. The chip is loose right now, so we're going to have to pick it up. And you see I've already got it centered pretty much on there, so it's ready to pick up. So I'm going to press the pickup button, and the head is going to come down and pick up the chip. now we pull out the camera. And now that's the pretty cool part here. Zoom in with the camera here. You can see that. Adjust it. Alright, so now you see the blue dots on the screen. That is the BGA chip, the new GPU. The yellow dots are the pads on the board. So now we have to line these up perfectly. Move the camera around, we can turn the chip a little bit. Alright, we see it's pretty much straight. Now we just have to line the balls up with the pad. Like so. Check down here. Good. There. All good. We're all good everywhere. So now push the camera back in, and now the GPU at the top, right there, is in line with the board. At the bottom, all the pads are lined up. So all we have to do now is press solder. And it's going to lower the chip down to the board. And it's lined up perfectly. It drops it on the board. And now it's going to run the heat profile where it heats up the chip, melts the solder, puts it back on the board. And I'll show you what result we get after we're done. Okay, here we are back. For the sake of time, I went ahead and put the heatsink back on, the RAM back in, and the fans back on, and I went ahead and booted it up. So here you can see the results. It is now booting into my test drive that I have, and it is running great. There's no lines in the screen, as you can see. Everything looks great. And to test this fully, we're going to install this into a complete unit and run a GPU stress test on it for a little while to make sure that it is going to uphold. These GPUs have been great. We haven't had any issues with them. Every now and then we'll get a board that does not take the GPU replacement. Typically that's because the board has been heated up too much, and therefore internally where the GPU sits, it's been damaged. And so with those we can't do anything with, unfortunately. We just have to get a replacement board for it. But for the most part, these boards are repairable. The GPUs have been great, and we've had no issues with them. If you are interested in sending your board in, a 2011 MacBook Pro, either 15-inch or a 17-inch, send it on our way. We'll get the GPU fixed for you so that you can get back up and running with your business or your personal life. And anyways, that's how we do it here at Pyromedic, and I hope you have a great day. Hope you've learned something.